Welcome to Horror Logic. I'm Aiden,
And I'm Stefan,
and this is where we talk about all things horror,
ranging from the logic behind horror movies.
to the true crimes that they were based off of.
Take a seat and get ready, because today we're talking about our interest in horror as well as ourselves.
To start off, we'll talk a little bit about ourselves. My name is Aiden. Ever since I was little, I grew up with horror movies. I could still remember watching Child's Play for the very first time. Chucky was the very first person/killer to really introduce me into horror and taught me how not to be scared of horror at such a young age.
My name is Stefan, and I've been interested in horror since I was little. I used to watch horror movies with my mother, and my favorite to watch at the time was a low-budget movie called Slither. Of course, other movies really introduced me into the topic, but Slither is what got me into the more gory side of what horror can be.
Now that we introduced ourselves, let's get into today's topic. What makes horror horror?
I personally believe that horror, as a genre, can be put in several different subjects. It can be gory or suspenseful or even psychological.
I think that horror can be more than just jump scares and really violent deaths. It could have meaning to it.
Such as certain movies like Hereditary, where the deaths are more than just a death. The death of the daughter signifies that the fact that the mother is still grieving over something else, the death of her mother. So when her child dies, it creates a lot of tension and build up overwhelming emotion.
Yeah, Hereditary was a movie that truly shocked me because the way it was laid out, it didn't feel like I was just watching a regular horror movie. It felt like I was watching something truly, truly horror. And I can tell that they put a lot of work into it.
And another movie by the same director who made Hereditary is Midsommar. The basis of that movie is that there is a cult in Sweden who, when they kill off their eldest, it's a sacrifice to their gods. And in this movie, a very powerful death scene, and it's not really shown as a death scene, it's more of just like you hear about what happens to the characters. It's the main character's family gets murdered by her oldest sister who is mentally ill. So when the family dies, the character also goes through this overwhelming grief and can't get over the death of her family, and it's completely understandable. The issue in this, though, is that her boyfriend is like, I can't think of the word, Aiden.
But I personally haven't watched Midsommar yet. I do plan on watching Midsommar, but from what I have seen, it really, there's something about Midsommar that really just makes me want to, like, I could tell there's more than just the
Basis.
Yeah, like the basis in horror, and there's just really a story behind there.
Well, those are two horror movies we liked.
And
or at least I liked.
Another thing that I can talk about is Stephen King. Stephen King has made really, really true horror. And the one thing that I really, really like about his books is about he takes real scenarios and turns them into horror, and that's the thing that's scary. Like in Misery, it's an actual person and not just like this entity or something that you can go, oh, this isn't real. This is something that like that can actually happen. And that's what I really like about Stephen King.
Personally, for Stephen King, I believe most of his tales are actually very good within the horror genre, especially when you think about the supernatural sense. Such as within It. It's not just Pennywise who's the evil here. There's also just the entire It. It is scary. We don't know what it is, but it likes to take the form of Pennywise. Just like in The Shining. The Shining is very good. And several theories talk about how in Stephen King's books, the darkness that goes throughout these movies is shared. It's it. And so in like The Shining is my favorite.
Yeah.
So within The Shining, when Jack's being taken over or possessed, I guess, it's a theory that it's not just the hotel, it's it taking, and that's why in Derry it takes 26 years for the Pennywise to come back. He's going around different places.
Yeah, and the thing that I really find interesting about it, besides all of the deaths, all of just everything, is that when you leave Derry, you forget. And that happens to all of the kids, is whenever they get older and they leave Derry, they forget they forget everything and what happened that summer. And when they go back, it all starts coming back to them.
Yeah, I also find it really interesting with the kids who did, when they did forget, they actually continued their like abuse, their cycles of abuse. Like when Beverly left, she got into a relationship with someone who was just as abusive as her father. When I can't remember the kid's name. Like when Richie left, he became a comedian, and his entire thing was that he was the funny kid. Eddie Kasprak, he got into a relationship with a woman who was much like his mother, overbearing and very
protective.
Yeah,
it was just like a whole like cycle that just kept repeating and repeating, and that's something so interesting.
It's also interesting to note that it's likely because they semi-remember their childhood, they're getting into these habits because this is what they are used to.
Yeah, and another horror series that I love to talk about is like found footage VHS tapes, specifically the Walton Files. The Walton Files is a really good series. For what it is truly horror, and especially Local 58.
Ooh, Local 58.
Local 58 is a really, really good
I haven't
horror.
seen all of it, but it is really good from what I've seen. Like the one that I've seen the most of or heard, like I know the most about, is the one with the moon broadcast, where they're telling
Don't look up.
Don't look up.
Oh
don't
my
look
God.
at the moon. But then it's going back and forth. It's like, don't look at the moon, look at the moon, it's fine, don't look at the moon.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting.
And one that I saw as well is there was like an emergency broadcast in the middle of the night, and they told the people that were watching that the government was doing like this secret experiment and something's coming and we need to do something, which I probably cannot speak of. And and then it just cuts to like, we're sorry for the interruption that you just witnessed, we're fine. And like the thing that's so scary about Local 58 is that this is like, it feels so real, because like this is something you can probably just wake up in the middle of the night and see it happening on your TV. Like that's the thing I find truly disturbing about series like Local 58 and the Walton Files, is that this is something that like could possibly happen.
Oh, another thing that I know very well about that's kind of like found footage, but at the same time it's just generally horror, is Where's Mary or something like that. It's on YouTube.
I've heard of it.
I can't remember if that's the name or not, but basically it's about this girl who's like trapped in this weird realm, and the only way she's communicating with anyone is through YouTube. She's making these videos of how things are happening to her and she doesn't know how to stop them. And some of the things I find really interesting is that it seems to be about her personification of her depression. The place she's in is full of her mental illness, all just personified. There's a darkness that follows her. In the mirror, there's self-doubt, there's insecurity. Like her reflection laughs at her. So when she's recording these, she's trying to communicate the fact that she needs help. Mm-hmm. I find that really interesting. What's another one you know?
Another thing that as silly as it is, what I find truly terrifying, Five Nights at Freddy's. I don't know why. It's so terrifying to me, because like it's scary to think about whenever you think about the backstory. and the murders and the missing children, because it can go from like this place you grew up with, but then whenever you get older and look back, you're like, I remember going back there when I was a child, but this happened and the whole reputation was ruined, and the whole murders and missing children could happen in real life, which I find really terrifying. And that's what scares me about this. As silly as it sounds.
There is a science behind the jump scares as well, which is the fact that when you're suddenly presented with this loud noise and a scary image in front of your face just popping up, it spikes your adrenaline and makes your heart beat faster, which is what gives you that fear. It is also a science behind it that it could maybe give you a heart attack.
Yeah, and your heart rate goes up and everything. I played the VR version of Five Nights at Freddy's. Literally, whenever I play it, it's like it feels so real, and there's like this thing, like it's like this pit in my stomach that like
when you know something bad's going to happen.
Yeah, and like it's just overwhelming that every second something's happening, which really scares me. And I really do love like horror games. Like the Resident Evil series is really, really good.
Another game that I know that gives you that kind of dark pit feeling is Outlast.
Outlast, I've heard of it.
I love Outlast so much. I've never been able to finish it, quite honestly. I have seen videos and such, but I haven't been able to finish it myself because I've just been so scared. Because like what it does is there's people constantly running at you, after you, things like that, and I'm like, I can't do that. Especially within the first game, where the first very scary scene, you're a journalist, right? You're going in to check out this insane asylum, abandoned. It's abandoned. So when you go in, you're vibing at first. You're taking pictures. You're just kind of looking around, taking notes.
Oh, I have played Outlast before. That game literally scared me. Like, it's like such a simple game, but it's so scary.
Yeah, especially when it first gets to like the really scary part with the big guy. Well, sorry to cut it short, but this is where we'll be ending the episode. Me and Aiden would like to thank you, dear viewer, for tuning in. And remember, there's logic to everything.